The next session of the program is Disaster Preparedness and State Procedures. We'll have a talk by Derek Becker from the South Carolina Emergency Management Division. He's been there since 2008. Prior to joining the South Carolina EMD, he was a reporter with the WOLO-TV, ABC in Columbia. And he's a graduate of the University of South Carolina, Columbia, has a bachelor's in broadcast journalism. So please welcome Derek Becker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, all of you who have come today. When we got here last year, we noticed one of the main things is that Seabrook Island, town of Kiawah, the fact that you are here is 75% of the struggle for us. So give yourselves a round of applause for being here and taking an interest in disaster preparedness, because that helps us tremendously at the state. On behalf of the South Carolina Emergency Management Division Director, Kim Stinson, I want to again thank you for having this disaster preparedness today. In addition to some of the things that we are doing at the state, I want to talk a little bit about Hurricane Matthew, but also I am pleased to inform you that the state of South Carolina is doing everything it can to eliminate the month of October on the calendar. Because 2015, 2016, if we get one in 2017, you might be on your own, because I know I'll be on leave. But we have learned a lot of lessons in the past, really, 3 years. We went from 2011, the only state in the country to not have a presidentially declared disaster, a staff of 56 people or so, to the state with the most disasters and the most experience. So now we have other states like California coming to us and asking us for advice. We say, you're on the West Coast, we leave you alone. But states like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, they want to know how we did what we did during the flood and in Hurricane Matthew. So that is a credit to you, not necessarily us, but it's a credit to you. Thank you for that. In terms of lessons learned from Hurricane Matthew, well, there's something to be learned from every single disaster. There's always going to be one or two issues. There's always ways that we can make our plans, make the way we do what we do in the middle of it much better. So I was very encouraged to hear the mayors talk about we're revising our hurricane plans. We're going to increase communication with the county. We're going to increase communication with our citizens. We've done an email tree. That's where it's at during disasters, is communicating. And not communicating as the hurricane's making landfall, not communicating in the thick of it or even right after, but today. While it is a beautiful beach teasing through those windows type day, talking about it today and taking a few steps at home to make sure you are personally prepared. Because guess what, guys? You're the first responder. Not the guys with the badges and the cool cars with the lights on them and the fire trucks and things. You are your own first responder. Disaster preparedness and disaster response begins at home. It begins at home with each of you. So thank you again for taking time to do a disaster preparedness plan. When it comes to Hurricane Matthew, it was the first time we had issued an evacuation of any kind since when? Anybody know? Not 89, not 99, nope, 2004. Hurricane Charlie. Of course, that was also the year we saw Hurricane Charlie, Francis, Ivan, Jean, and Gaston, but not necessarily in that order. So that was a big year for South Carolina. It was also a year in terms of getting a lot of emergencies, but none of it meeting any sort of large-scale disaster recovery type operations. So Matthew is certainly shaping up to be one of the largest disasters South Carolina has seen, but it's nowhere nearly as big as Hugo. Even in adjusted dollars. So when we look at it from a dollar amount, and it's still being estimated, all of the potential impacts will probably be in estimated form of some type for the next couple of years, but Matthew was nothing. And we were just talking with the Weather Service and with some folks in the back. It could have easily, what you saw in Edisto could have easily been right here. If that storm had just turned what would be, a nanometer on the map, everything you saw on Palmetto Avenue on Edisto Island could have been Seabrook Island Road. The damage you saw in Beaufort, DeFusky, Hilton Head, that could have been this area. The damage you saw in Florence in South Carolina, that could have been downtown Charleston. So we were very lucky. unless you live in Beaufort County, and we are working very closely with them to not only revise their plans, but to continue the disaster recovery cleanup. And to further answer your question, no, it does not happen very quickly. Yes, this is FEMA programs that we're dealing with, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that those systems are in place to prevent abuse of the system. And you just have to look back to Hurricane Sandy, to Hurricane Katrina, to Andrew, to actually the entire history of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to look at how people have tried to get more than what was really what they were supposed to get. So yes, those systems, those checks are in place to prevent any type of abuse of the system. So yeah, and it takes a while. It doesn't happen nearly as fast as we want it to. We still have state recovery staff that are working directly with FEMA, and there are whipcrackers. They're staying on them to make sure that they are doing what they are supposed to do, because these programs are extensive. And these are people who don't necessarily know South Carolina other than what they see on Bravo or travel shows and things like that. And they're working as best as they can, and I can assure you of that. But to give you an idea, and I don't want to hurt your feelings on this one, Hurricane Hugo, September 1989, right? The state officially recovered from Hugo in 2006. That's how long it takes. Hurricane Katrina, New Orleans probably never will recover, but the estimates are 50 years. It takes a long time. Some areas probably will never be back. Some businesses will probably never be back as a result of the storms they experience. They just decide to go and do other things. So what can we do to make it faster? Number one, we always try to revise our plans. We try to make sure that we have full-time recovery staff at the State Emergency Management Division. We work with each of the 46 county emergency managers to make sure that they have what they need. About 50% of the federal funding that we receive for operating budgets, we pass directly to the county emergency management offices, and for like a county like Allendale, that's their entire operating budget. And we have to keep those services. And unfortunately, the tornado never strikes in a major metropolitan area. It strikes where? In a place like Allendale, right? As do the train derailments for a reason. But anyway, when it comes to hurricane season, as we are getting ready, we've looked at our plans. One of the main lessons learned and things we're really going to try to work on and look at is, how do we get you to leave? We want you to get out of here. We don't want to deal with you. How do we get you to leave? We estimate about 360,000 people evacuated the coast from Matthew. That's less than 50% of our population on the coast. We are very lucky that we only had 5 fatalities. And Lord rest their soul, but we are very, very lucky. So one of the things we're going to be looking at, if you have any suggestions, barring cuss words and things like that, of course, we're certainly open to it. But when the governor says, I've issued an evacuation, I want you to know that it is not something that we do lightly. It's looking at the best information that we're getting from the National Hurricane Center. It's getting the advice from our experts who have disaster response experience, like Captain Rob Woods back who's going to speak a little bit later. All of the state agencies, all of the county emergency management agencies who are talking to your mayors and your emergency management staff at the municipal level. And so this is a collective decision from pretty much every single public safety agency that you pay taxes for, saying, you've got to go, otherwise this storm will kill you. So how do we get through the people who say, oh, I'm staying? I think personally, coming from Clinton, South Carolina, that this is South Carolina and you're not going to tell us what to do, right? Essentially. But at the same time, when we're trying to tell you what to do, it's not to get you out so we don't have to deal with you. It's for your own personal safety. So number one thing to do, you have your disaster plan. You check your insurance. Now's the time. We've learned a lot about the insurance process over the last couple of years, haven't we? We have the all-new 2017 Hurricane Guide that's sitting in the back. Go ahead, please take a look at it. We have completely updated this thing for this year. There's even a section on returning home. And I'm glad the mayor spoke about that just a few minutes ago, because no, there are situations where we saw in Matthew, the storm had just passed, the sun had risen at about 6 a.m., and we started getting calls, okay, when can I go home? I live on Edisto. I need to go check my property. I'm in Greenville. Well, we don't know the situation in Edisto. Well, my neighbor just posted a picture of their house on Facebook. It looks great. They have power. Yes, ma'am, but do they have sewer? Can you get there down US 17? No. and no. So imagine if you choose not to evacuate, you may be okay. You may survive. You may have power. You may have the ability to post things to Facebook and say you're okay. But think about the things that you might not have, like the ability to access public safety services because of trees down, the ability to go to the bathroom safely and with some bit of sanitation, the ability to get medications, the amenities that you have each and every day that you need to survive, you could potentially be cut off from them depending on the storm and the conditions in the aftermath. And everything that we do, we have plans in place for reentry, we have plans in place for disaster recovery, but everything we do in terms of those plans are based on the storm's conditions and what it did to us. So we don't know. And it takes us time to get there. So grab the hurricane guide. There, like I said, the section on returning home, some things to think about, things to put in your hurricane kit. This is something that we keep in our cars as well, so just so we have a good reference point of disaster preparedness materials. Like I said before, we hope we don't get anything in October or any time this hurricane season. We want beautiful days like today so people come and spend money, right? So I'll open it up to any questions, anything that you guys would like to discuss. Fire away. No? Okay, well, we'll be back there. Grab a hurricane guide. Oh, you got one? Okay, earthquakes. Do you evacuate for an earthquake? Well, no. There is no way to evacuate from an earthquake because despite all of our technology, despite everything that we're able to do in the year 2017, earthquakes can't be predicted. California is doing some work on that because they're earthquake central for the country. But in terms of an earthquake, the best thing that you can do, and we've actually got magnets you can slap on your fridge, is if the ground starts to shake, drop, cover, hold on. Drop to the ground, cover your neck and most of your body, if you're able to, with under a good sturdy table or a desk, and hold on until the ground stops shaking. Because that's the one that scares us. That's the one that really we really don't know what would happen if we got a major earthquake like we experienced in 1886. So, good question. Yes?
What might be the geological difference living in a sandy area as opposed to solid rock?
Okay. Well, I am not a seismic expert, but I can tell you what we experienced in 1886, and a lot of this is based on the historical record such as it was back then. So August 31st, 1886, we experienced a 7.0 to a 7.3 earthquake in Summerville, South Carolina. It might be, 2 hours from here or so, but it's about 3 seconds from here in earthquake terms. That earthquake was so massive, and the nature of our soil, the nature of what we're sitting on in plate tectonics, it was felt from Chicago to Cuba. We've done estimates that if we experienced an earthquake like that, this, in modern days, we would have about 900 fatalities right then and there. 45,000 injuries and casualties in terms of people needing medical assistance. About 125,000 people would be homeless. The economic impact would be upwards of 25 billion, and that's a conservative estimate. So like I said, that was the one that really we try to pay attention to in terms of planning, but most of it is post-incident, as we say. So every bridge would have to be evaluated, all of the buildings to where we would normally put shelters and things like that. So typically, and we can get confirmation, with sand, with mud, it tends to turn into liquid, what we call liquefaction. Jello, essentially. So you would have buildings sinking. We estimate it would only take about a 6.0 to completely level the battery in Charleston. You would also have buildings falling on each other depending on how they were built. Wooden structures, wooden buildings and houses are better able to withstand the effects of an earthquake versus brick because they're much more rigid structures. So, did that answer your question? Okay, great. Okay, yes, sir. That four-letter word? Yeah, well, there is nothing in FEMA's policies that prevents a local organization from acting quickly if lives are in danger. That is typically covered under the public assistance program well after the fact. But in terms of getting emergency response crews, that does not, FEMA programs do not step in and interfere with that in any way, and they shouldn't. So if there's a situation of somebody worried that FEMA's not going to reimburse us because I need to remove this tree to get an ambulance through, go ahead and do it. There's plenty of time to get that paperwork done. Like I said, 50 years for New Orleans, get that paperwork done in the aftermath. But when you're talking about local government reimbursement, there are about 7 categories, 6 or 7 categories, and the first 2 involve emergency protective measures that you do during the incident and immediately after. But FEMA programs are not response programs, they're recovery programs. By a reason. I mean, and one of FEMA's talking points number 2 is all disasters are local. So, good question. And we can talk offline all you want about that 4-letter word FEMA. So, okay. Well, thank you very much.